My name is John, and I can say that the summer of 2018 changed my life forever. I clearly remember the night I met Sarah, a warm June night, at a party at a mutual friend's house. The house was full of laughter and loud music, and I felt relaxed, enjoying the company of friends and the celebratory atmosphere. It was then that I saw her for the first time, on the other side of the room, talking animatedly with some friends. Sarah was stunning, with her blonde hair that fell in soft waves over her shoulders and blue eyes so bright they seemed to capture the light of every star in the sky. She wore a light blue dress that highlighted her slender and elegant figure. When our eyes met, I felt a spark, an instant connection that I had never experienced before. She smiled, and at that moment, I knew I needed to meet her. I took courage and approached, trying to ignore the nervousness that was growing inside me. "Hi, I'm John," he said, extending his hand. She shook my hand firmly and responded with a warm smile. "Hi, John. I'm Sarah." From that moment on, we started talking as if we had known each other for years. We discovered that we had many interests in common, from our passion for books to our love of outdoor adventures. The conversation flowed naturally, and we soon moved away from the noise of the party to a quieter corner of the garden. There, under the soft light of the lanterns, we shared stories and laughter, discovering more about our lives and dreams. There was something magical about that night, something that enveloped us and made us feel like we were the only two people in the world. Every word, every smile, deepened the connection we felt even more. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other frequently. Our meetings were always special, full of moments of joy and complicity. We walked together in the park, went to live music shows, and spent hours talking about anything and everything. Sarah had a unique way of seeing the world, and her presence made me feel more alive than ever. She was sweet, intelligent, and had a contagious energy that captivated me more every day. Our relationship blossomed quickly, and it soon became apparent to both of us that we were destined to be together. Within a few months, I could no longer imagine my life without Sarah. Every moment by your side was a new discovery, a new reason to believe that I had found my soulmate. The certainty that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her grew within me with each passing day. I look back now and see how those first few months were a true fairy tale. Sarah brought a light to my life that I didn't even know was missing. Our love was like a garden blooming in spring, full of promise and hope. The connection I felt at first glance turned into a deep and unbreakable bond. That summer of 2018, I found not just a girlfriend, but my best friend and future wife. On our first anniversary, I decided it was time to take the next step. I wanted the proposal to be perfect, something Sarah would never forget. I spent weeks planning every detail, from choosing the ring to where I would pop the question. I wanted everything to reflect the beauty and uniqueness of our relationship. I chose a secluded beach, a place we discovered together during one of our walks. It was a peaceful beach, with fine white sand, surrounded by cliffs and with a stunning view of the sunset. It seemed like the perfect setting for such a special moment. I booked a table at a nearby restaurant where I planned a candlelit dinner after ordering. That day, Sarah thought we were just celebrating our anniversary. I spent the entire afternoon trying to control my anxiety, hoping that everything would go well. When we arrived at the beach, the sun was already starting to set, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold. We walked hand in hand, talking about our plans for the future, while my heart beat faster by the minute. As the sunlight began to disappear over the horizon, I stopped and turned to Sarah. I looked into his eyes and saw the same spark I felt the first time we met. I held her hands and, with a nervous smile, began to talk about how much she meant to me. I told her that every moment with her was a gift, and that I wanted to spend the rest of my life making her happy. So I knelt down in the sand and took the ring out of my pocket. It was a simple yet elegant ring with a diamond that sparkled in the sunset light. "Sarah, will you marry me?" I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to stop. Then, with a beaming smile, she said, "Yes, John, I do." Standing up, I put the ring on her finger and hugged her tightly. The joy I felt at that moment was indescribable, as if all the stars in the sky were aligned for us. We stood there, holding each other, as the last light of the sun disappeared, celebrating the beginning of a new stage in our lives. After ordering, we went to the restaurant I booked. By candlelight, we toast to our future together, sharing dreams and promises. Our friends and family were thrilled when they heard the news, and their happiness only added to ours. It felt like we were living in a fairy tale, surrounded by the love and support of those who mattered most to us. That night, as we walked back along the beach, I couldn't help but feel incredibly lucky. Sarah and I were at the beginning of a beautiful journey, and I knew that no matter what challenges we faced, we would be together. The proposal was just the first of many unforgettable moments we shared, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us. A few months before the wedding, my career took a significant leap forward. I got a job at a large financial company, an opportunity that promised not only a good salary but also rapid advancement in my profession. It was there that I met Amanda, a coworker who, right away, showed herself to be an extremely ambitious and determined person. Amanda was a woman with a striking presence. Tall, with straight brown hair and piercing green eyes, she knew how to attract attention. Her confident and assertive personality made everyone around her notice her. She quickly stood out in the office and became an influential figure among her colleagues. His ability to deal with people and manipulate situations to his advantage was impressive. Due to the nature of our work, Amanda and I started spending a lot of time together, whether in meetings or on collaborative projects. Initially, our interaction was strictly professional, but as time went on, she began to show a growing personal interest. She always found an excuse to prolong our conversations, whether discussing strategies or simply commenting on trivial matters. Amanda knew how to make a person feel special. She often praised me, highlighting my skills and contributions at work. His compliments, combined with his constant presence, began to create a sense of closeness that I hadn't anticipated. On a few occasions, she invited me to lunch or coffee after work, and these little getaways became frequent moments in our routine. As the days went by, I began to realize that Amanda's attention to me was not just friendly. There was a clear intention in his gestures and words. She made a point of complimenting my appearance, commenting on my intelligence, and subtly suggesting that I deserved something more in life. Even though I was engaged to Sarah and deeply in love with her, Amanda's constant presence and attention began to plant seeds of doubt and curiosity in my mind. Amanda, being extremely perceptive, seemed to sense any hesitation on my part. She knew exactly when to be closer and when to move away slightly to maintain the tension. His ability to mess with people to get what he wanted was almost artistic, and I, in the midst of all this dynamic, began to feel torn between my loyalty to Sarah and the temptation that Amanda represented. Our relationship began to change in subtle but noticeable ways. The workplace that was once just a place for professional growth has now also become a minefield of confusing emotions. Every meeting with Amanda, every conversation, every look, increased the tension that hovered between us. And that's how, without realizing it, I began to get dangerously close to a line I should never have crossed. It all happened on a cold winter night, after a company event. The atmosphere was lively, full of laughter and loud conversations, but I felt restless. Sarah and I were struggling to cover expenses for her dream wedding, and the financial stress was starting to take a toll on me. Amanda, always perceptive, seemed to notice my discomfort. She approached with an enigmatic smile, her eyes shining with a determination that left me disconcerted. After the event, as everyone began to disperse, Amanda suggested that we go to a nearby bar for a drink. I accepted, thinking a casual conversation might ease my mind. At the bar, the atmosphere was more intimate, with soft lights and quiet music. We sat in a more isolated corner, where Amanda seemed more comfortable discussing personal matters. She started the conversation lightly, talking about work and our colleagues. But soon the conversation took an unexpected turn. Amanda, with her usual candor, mentioned how stressed I appeared and asked directly about my concerns. Reluctantly, I ended up confessing my financial difficulties in paying for the wedding. She listened intently, her gaze intensifying as I spoke. Then, suddenly, Amanda made the proposal. "John, I know you're going through a difficult time," she began, her voice low and seductive. "I can help. I have money and I can give you a significant amount to solve your problems. I paused, confused and surprised, trying to understand what she was suggesting. All I ask in return, she continued, leaning slightly closer, is that you spend one night with me. My mind went blank. The proposal was shocking and unexpected. Amanda was not just offering financial help, but attaching it to a huge personal price. She knew exactly what she was doing, exploiting my vulnerability and the love I had for Sarah. The temptation was enormous, and the offer seemed irresistible at that moment, considering the weight I was carrying. I was paralyzed, my mind spinning with the magnitude of the moral dilemma I faced. On one side, there was Sarah, the love of my life, and our dreams of a future together. On the other side, there was the crushing pressure of debts and the possibility of resolving them with a single gesture. Amanda, observing my internal struggle, remained calm and confident, knowing that her proposal had shaken me to my core. The night continued, but I could barely concentrate on her words. My mind was torn, trying to rationalize the situation. It would only be one night, I told myself, something Sarah would never need to know. The amount Amanda offered was more than enough to cover all our expenses and still ensure a comfortable start to our lives together. The temptation and promise of immediate relief were too seductive to ignore. When we finally left the bar, Amanda gave me one last expectant look. "Think about my offer, John," she said, before walking away into the cold night. I stood there, alone, the indecent proposal reverberating in my mind, aware that I was on the verge of a decision that would change my life forever. I gave in to temptation. For days, Amanda's proposal echoed in my mind, corroding my defenses. I convinced myself it would just be a one-time thing, a slip-up that Sarah would never need to know about. The weight of debt and the pressure of giving Sarah the wedding of her dreams ultimately prevailed. One night, I texted Amanda, accepting her offer. She responded promptly, arranging the meeting at a discreet hotel in the city center. I arrived at the hotel with a heavy heart and confused thoughts. The receptionist handed me the key to the room Amanda had reserved, and I walked slowly up, each step a reminder of the line I was about to cross. When I opened the door, Amanda was there, waiting with a smile that mixed triumph and seduction. Trying to block out the whirlwind of emotions, I moved on, justifying to myself that it was for Sarah's sake and our future together. That night was a blur of conflicting guilt and desire. Amanda knew exactly what to do to keep my mind off the moral storm that was consuming me. When it was all over, she handed me an envelope full of money. With shaking hands, I accepted payment, feeling dirty and worthless. I tried to convince myself that it was a necessary evil, that it would soon be just a distant memory. In the following days, I used the money to pay all the wedding expenses. Sarah was beaming, thanking me repeatedly for making our dream come true. Her smile and happiness should have been enough to ease me, but instead, her every gesture of affection was a cruel reminder of my betrayal. Guilt slowly ate away at me, turning every moment of joy into silent torment. The wedding was perfect. Sarah looked stunning in her white dress, and I did my best to hide the internal agony. Our friends and family celebrated with us, unaware of the shadow that hung over me. Yet even as I smiled and danced with Sarah, a part of me knew that this moment of happiness was built on a terrible lie. After the wedding, I tried to move on, burying the memory of that night with Amanda. However, the decision to betray Sarah haunted me constantly. Disturbing dreams and flashes of guilt invaded my mind at the most unexpected moments. Every time I looked at Sarah, my heart sank, reminding me of the purity of her love and the betrayal I was hiding. Life took its course, but the shadow of that night never left me. Amanda, satisfied with the power she had over me, kept her distance, occasionally casting insinuating glances when we passed each other at work. Every interaction with her was a cruel reminder of my mistake, an ongoing punishment that I knew I deserved. The decision to give in to temptation was not just a moment of weakness. It was a sentence I would carry forever, haunting every aspect of my life. The wedding day finally arrived, and everything seemed like a dream. The sun was shining brightly, the sky was clear and cloudless, and happiness was on every guest's face. Sarah looked radiant in her white dress, and I couldn't believe how lucky I was to marry such an incredible woman. The ceremony was emotional, and when we exchanged our vows, I felt like maybe I could find redemption in making Sarah happy. During the reception, the atmosphere was one of pure celebration. Laughter and toasts echoed through the room, and friends and family shared stories and wishes for eternal happiness for us. Sarah was ecstatic, and every time her eyes met mine, I saw love and trust. But that peace was brutally interrupted when, in the middle of the party, I saw Sarah look at her phone with an expression of confusion that quickly turned to pain. She stood up abruptly from the table, gripping the phone tightly. His eyes were full of tears as he stared at me across the room. My heart stopped when she started walking towards me, and I knew something terrible had happened. She stood in front of me, holding the phone like a weapon. "John," she said, her voice shaking, "what is this?" I took the phone from her shaking hands and saw the anonymous messages she had received. Photos and videos of the night I spent with Amanda were there, cruelly exposed. My world collapsed. I tried to speak, but words failed me. The shock and pain in Sarah's eyes were devastating. She stared at me, waiting for an explanation, but all I could do was stammer out useless excuses. "How can you do this to me?" Sarah shouted, her voice echoing through the room and silencing the party. All eyes turned to us, but nothing else mattered. Sarah was falling apart in front of me, and I was the one causing all the pain. "You cheated on me. At our wedding, John. How could you?" Her every word was a stab in my heart. I tried to reach her, but she pulled away, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she said, her voice breaking. "It's over, John. I can't be with someone who betrayed me like that." And then, in front of all our friends and family, she ripped the ring off her finger and threw it on the floor. With one last look of pure sadness and heartbreak, she turned and ran out of the room, leaving me paralyzed and shattered. The party fell apart as quickly as our marriage. The guests, shocked and uncomfortable, began to leave in silence, whispering among themselves. I stood there, motionless, watching everything fall apart around me. What should have been the happiest day of my life had turned into a nightmare. The decision I made months ago, that single night of betrayal, had destroyed everything I loved most. At that moment, I realized that the consequences of my actions were more devastating than I could have ever imagined. Sarah is gone, taking with her all our hopes and dreams. I was alone, facing the reality that my betrayal had not only destroyed our marriage, but also the woman I loved. The pain and regret I felt in that moment was indescribable, a punishment I knew I would carry forever. My life completely fell apart after that fateful day. Not only did Sarah leave me, but she also made a point of cutting me out of her life entirely. She blocked me on all social networks and, within a few days, packed her things and moved to another city, without leaving any trace. The house we once shared has become empty and cold, every corner of it reminding me of what I lost. The following days were a blur of despair and loneliness. I tried calling Sarah countless times. I sent messages begging for a chance to explain, to redeem myself, but every attempt was ignored. The pain of his absence was unbearable, and the guilt was eating me up inside. Every day was a struggle to get out of bed, to face the reality I had created. At work, things got even worse. Amanda, realizing the vulnerability of the situation, wasted no time in using this to her advantage. She manipulated the narrative to present herself as a victim and framed me for harassment, claiming that I had used our night together as a way to pressure her. The company, concerned about its image, and without investigating deeply, decided to fire me to avoid any scandal. I was left without a job, without income, and without prospects. My savings quickly ran out, and I was soon struggling to pay basic bills. Friends, who initially showed some support, began to withdraw, unable to deal with the intensity of my fall. The betrayal and dishonor associated with me was too heavy for most of them. Before long, I found myself completely alone. Sarah's loss was the most painful of all. Every moment we spent together, every laugh shared, every plan made for the future, were now just bitter memories. The nights were the worst, when the darkness brought out all the regrets and remorse. The betrayal I committed felt like an endless nightmare, a shadow that haunted me at every step. I spent most of my days locked up at home, avoiding the outside world. The shame was overwhelming, and the thought of facing any of our former friends or colleagues was unbearable. The city streets that were once full of life and possibilities were now a maze of painful memories. Every corner, every cafe, every park reminded me of Sarah and the life I ruined. Loneliness and depression took over me. I tried to find some solace in therapy and support groups, but the truth was that the hole I had dug for myself was too deep. The nights were long and dark, filled with thoughts of regret and guilt. The weight of my actions felt unbearable, and the idea of a future without Sarah was something I could barely contemplate. Over time, I began to realize that my punishment was not just the loss of Sarah, but also the loss of myself. The betrayal had destroyed not only our love, but also my own integrity and dignity. I was faced with a long journey of self-redemption, one that I knew would not be easy and might never be fully achieved. Every day was a struggle to find some meaning, some reason to move forward, even though I knew I could never undo what I had done. I spent months immersed in the darkness of depression, isolated from the world, reflecting on my choices. The reality of my betrayal and its consequences was a constant shadow that hung over me, making each day an unbearable challenge. The house that was once a home full of love and hope was now a lonely prison, where every corner whispered memories of Sarah and the future I destroyed. In the silence of these walls, I began to confront the naked truth of what I had done. I realized that I traded true love and lasting happiness for a moment of weakness and greed. The temptation represented by Amanda seemed insignificant compared to the depth of the love I lost. Every memory with Sarah was a painful reminder of what he had sacrificed for a fleeting illusion. The depression deepened with each reflection, and the guilt grew heavier each day. I felt trapped in a never-ending cycle of regret, constantly recalling the events that led me to that fateful moment. The choices I made, driven by financial pressure and attraction to Amanda, now seemed absurd and indefensible. I spent countless hours revisiting every detail, trying to understand how I could be so weak, so blind. Sarah's every smile, every happy moment we shared, was now tinged with the bitterness of what I had done. Guilt was a constant weight in my chest, a pain that wouldn't let up, no matter how I tried to distract myself or justify my actions. The nights were the worst. In the silence and darkness, my mind became a battlefield, where every thought was an accusation. I relived the night with Amanda over and over, each time feeling more and more the devastation of my betrayal. The money I used to pay for the wedding now seemed cursed, every penny a reminder of the exorbitant price I paid for my weakness. Eventually, I began to realize that I needed to find a way to move forward, to somehow redeem myself. Regret and guilt consumed me, but they also forced me to confront my flaws and seek some form of growth. Betrayal taught me harshly about the value of true love and the fragility of trust. Each day, I struggled to accept full responsibility for my actions. The anger and bitterness I initially felt toward Amanda and her circumstances began to dissolve, giving way to deeper introspection. I understood that the true punishment did not come from external circumstances, but from the actual realization of the irreparable damage I caused. These months of reflection have been a painful but necessary journey. I learned that the path to redemption would not be easy and that I may never be able to undo the harm I caused. Yet I knew I had to try, that each step toward healing and understanding was a small step forward in my quest for redemption. And although regret and guilt continued to haunt me, I began to envision the possibility of a future where I could at least live with integrity and honesty, even if the true happiness I once had could never be achieved again. I decided I needed to change. After months of being immersed in the darkness of guilt and regret, I realized that the only way to find some relief was to rebuild my life and become a better person. I sought professional help, starting with a therapist who helped me deal with depression and understand the patterns of behavior that led me to make such destructive decisions. The therapy sessions were challenging but fundamental. I had to confront my fears, my insecurities, and, most of all, my own responsibility for the events that devastated my life. It was a painful process, but also a liberating one. Each session was an opportunity to better understand myself and learn to accept my mistakes without letting them completely define me. At the same time, I knew I needed to find a way to support myself. The search for a new job was arduous, especially with the stain of my previous layoff weighing on me. However, I persevered, sending out resumes, participating in interviews, and accepting any opportunity that came my way. I got a modest job at a small company, a position that was far from my previous prestige, but gave me a chance to start over. I worked hard to prove myself and regain the trust of my new colleagues. I dedicated myself completely to my tasks, seeking excellence in everything I did. Each small success was a step towards rebuilding my self-esteem. The hard work started to pay off, and I slowly gained respect and recognition in the new company. Despite the advances, the ghost of my mistake continued to haunt me. The memory of Sarah, the pain I caused, and the betrayal I committed were never far from my thoughts. There were days when the guilt and sadness came back with a vengeance, threatening to undo the progress I had made. However, I learned to deal with these moments, using the tools I acquired in therapy to maintain focus and determination. In addition to work and therapy, I began to engage in activities that helped me grow as a person. I went back to studying, signing up for night courses that expanded my knowledge and skills. I also started participating in volunteer activities, trying to give back to the community and find a greater purpose beyond my own needs and regrets. The journey of self-transformation was not easy, but each step brought me closer to the person I wanted to be. There were good days and bad days, but little by little, I began to notice a real change in myself. The search for redemption and trying to live a more whole and honest life began to bring a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. Still, I knew the shadow of my past would never completely disappear. The mistake I made was too big to simply forget. However, instead of allowing it to destroy me, I chose to use it as a powerful lesson, a constant reminder of the importance of making decisions with integrity and truly valuing those we love. I continue to work hard every day to become a better person. Although the road to redemption is long and full of challenges, I am committed to my transformation. And although the ghost of my mistake accompanies me, I no longer allow it to define who I am. I found a new way of living, a way that, despite the scars, is guided by honesty, hard work, and the desire to do good. Life punished me in many ways after that fateful betrayal. I never found love like Sarah's again, and every relationship I tried ended in failure. It seemed like the universe made a point of constantly reminding me of the mistake I made. The women I met were wonderful in their own ways, but none had the deep, heartfelt connection that Sarah and I shared. Each attempt at a new relationship was a misstep, a cruel reminder that something essential was missing. The trust and bond one once had with Sarah was irreplaceable, and that reality haunted me daily. The lonely nights and empty days were filled with painful memories and incessant regrets. The pain of having betrayed someone so special followed me like a shadow, persistent and relentless. With each love failure, the guilt and regret intensified. It was as if I was destined to pay eternally for the mistake I made. The betrayal that seemed, for a brief moment, to be a solution to my financial problems, ended up being the decision that destroyed everything I held dear. I learned, the hard way, that some choices can have irreparable consequences. Each new attempt at love collided with the wall of my guilt and my past. My professional life has never been the same again. Even though I managed to get back on my feet and stabilize myself financially, the ambition and prestige that I once wanted have completely lost their meaning. Success at work was now just a means of support, devoid of the shine and satisfaction I once sought. The void left by Sarah and the betrayal committed overshadowed any material achievement. Today, I live with the hope that one day I will be able to find redemption. I look daily for ways to be a better person, to contribute positively to the lives of others, and to compensate, in some way, for the harm I have caused. I participate in volunteer activities, try to help those around me, and dedicate time to introspection and personal growth. However, I am aware that I will never get back what I lost. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's the immeasurable value of true love and trust. They are fragile treasures that, once broken, are almost impossible to restore. The lesson I learned, although painful, is something I hope others can absorb without having to go through the same suffering. Value true love, and don't let yourself be carried away by temporary temptations. The consequences of a moment of weakness can haunt them for the rest of their lives, as they haunt me every day. If my story can serve as a warning, so be it. I hope those who listen can recognize the importance of making decisions with integrity and deeply valuing those they love. True love is rare and precious, and must be protected above all things. I learned this the hard way, and that lesson is the legacy I hope to leave, in the hope that others can avoid the mistakes I made and find lasting happiness and peace.